Today on the Woodgrafter we're going to be reviewing the BS75 E. That's a belt sander from Festool. That sounds good? Stick around. Hey and welcome to the Woodgrafter. I'm Andy Gile, and if you're new here, welcome on board. It's really great to have you. Our mission is to inspire, educate and support you in your journey to becoming a better woodworker. We do that through a whole series of video productions. We do tool tips and tool reviews, videos such as this one. We do small project builds, we do news from the industry and get together every month for a jolly old chat. We're also supported by a website, www.thewoodgrafter.com, and over there you're going to find detailed project builds, step by step, and a series of courses to build something. Free plans are available and support from a very vibrant community. So if you're not a member of the website, get over there now and grab yourself a free membership. If you're not subscribing here, subscribe now. Give me a thumbs up and leave a comment. I love to hear from you, good or bad, and I respond to each and every one. With that said, let's look at this belt sander. Now I know there's thousands of people about to hit the keyboard and telling me I'm a fool for buying a belt sander in this day and age, and instead I should have gone for the Festool Rotex, which is the best pinnacle sander ever known to mankind. And you're right, the Rotex is a really good machine, and I love that combination of geared power and orbital sander in one device that allows me to do fast removal of stock and also fine work as I start to complete my projects. The reason I've gone for a belt sander is for one very specific reason, where I personally believe a belt sander is better than an orbital type sander, and that purpose is the flattening of large panels. If you follow me for a while, you know I'm really into building fine furniture, and a lot of my construction involves glued up panels. Glued up panels in the side, glued up panels to make an overall top, glued up panels to make drawer bottoms, etc. And all of my furniture really has a lot of dependency on panel construction. I wanted something that was going to allow me to flatten those panels off. Now what I find using a rotary sander is you start to get waves in the surface. Yes, it's cleaning it, yes, it's smoothing it down, but I start to get waves in the surface. And as you rub your hand across a large panel, you can feel those waves. The ideal tool for my job is a drum sander, but I don't have the space and at the moment don't have the budget to invest in a drum sander. Maybe in the future, but for now, no. So I'm going to try the promise of a belt sander to work with the grain using a sanding frame that we'll look at in a second to give me those flat panels I'm looking for. So that's the reason why I've gone for the belt sander, not decrying the value of the orbital sander, the Rotex sander, but that's the reason I've done this. With that said, let's see what we get in the kit. Well, first of all, it comes in this mammoth Sustainer Maxi, I think it's called. And look at this beast, it's hugely heavy and hugely big. In fact, it's probably bigger than my workshop, but still, that's what it comes in. So let's open it up, and inside you can start to see what we have. First things first, usually in the Festool products, and this is no different, you get some leaflets on the lid. It talks about the dust bag, it talks about a fence, it shows us pictures of two stands that we'll look at in a second, and it gives us a picture of a dust extractor, and it shows how it all fits inside the overall kit, which is all very nice. And then it's got the usual upsell. If you're going to use a sander, use it with an MFT, keep it in a Sustainer box. Why not invest in some hand sanding stuff? Why not get a suction device and buy a Festool Hoover to go with the entire kit? So pretty standard Festool marketing and fodder. So inside the box we get the usual Festool manual, multilingual, with a pull-out thing here that gives you the different component parts of the sander itself, and we'll say multilingual inside there, and it's got a section in English which is very pleasant for us. For some random reason it's got a parts list inside here as well, so if you did want to order any new parts for your sander, it gives you the codes here. We then get the safety instructions that tells us how to keep ourselves safe working area, health and safety gear, and we also obviously get the all-inclusive guarantee. And this is one of the key selling features of Festool, and it's great to see it on the sanding range as well. This gives you theft protection and also gives you extended service if you've registered your device, which I highly recommend that you do. And then we get to the goodies itself. It comes with a sanding bag that we are probably not going to use because we're going to put it to a dust vacuum system, but it's there if you should wish. You've then got a couple of these stands, and this is the Benchtop Kit, and these fix to this device and it allows us to mount it upside down on a bench and use it as a stationary standing tool, which would be quite useful, I think, and we'll look at those shortly. It also comes with a clip-on dust extractor port that sits onto the device. Dust extraction apparently is pretty good on this, but we'll find out for ourselves when we put it through its paces. And this will take the smaller Festool holes inside and the larger Festool holes on the outside, so that's really quite useful. In my kit there came a spare piece of 80 grit Rubens sandpaper. And then we have the device itself. Now my kit also came with this frame here, and this is a thing that turns this from an ordinary sander into something quite special that allows us to control how much material we're taking off, and this is the thing that gives me the promise of those flat panels that I'm looking for. It also comes with a second sanding belt that's fitted to the machine, and this one here is from memory 100 grit. So that's it, that's what you get for your money. Disappointed to see that it's a fixed wire. It would have been nice to see the standard connect-it system for Festool that I use on all my other tools, but this comes with a fixed wire. So there you go, that's what you get in your kit. Now in the UK at this moment, and we're now in March 2020, this is retailing for just under £500, £499, and that was for the set version. Recommended retail price is about £520 from memory, so there is a small offer on at this moment in time that's just making this a little bit more attractive, but that's still a high price point. £500 is still a high price point. They do a bigger version of this. That bigger version is going to be well over £1,000. Exactly the same device, just a bigger sanding belt. We're not going to talk about that one today, but you can see this is a serious investment if you wish to go down this route. To give you a comparison, the Rotex with the 150 plate on it is round about the same price. So you've got to knowingly walk into this. This is not as versatile as the Rotex. As I say, it gives me one feature, and that's those flat panels, that's worth for me paying the money. But really think that through, whether that's what you need or you need a more general purpose type device. So this comes in two variants. It comes in the BS75 and it comes in the BS75 E. The one you see here is the BS75 E. Now the difference between the 75E and the 75 is in the motor and the electronics inside it. The 75 has an 800 watt motor inside it, the 75E has a 1010 watt motor inside it, so there's more power in the E version. The biggest advantage is this has a variable speed on it. You can see the adjustment knob here, and that's going to give you a variable range of 200 meters per minute all the way up to 380 per minute in incremental steps 1 through 6, and you can see the range there. At 1 it's 200, 2 it's 240, 3 it's 300, 4 it's 340, 5 it's 360, and 6 it's 380. And that's going to give you quite a lot of control and adjustment as you stand through your work. It's suitable for a variety of products: wood, aluminium, metal, man-made materials, removing of paint. So it's quite a versatile device in what it does. But it's a power horse, a lot of power inside this with pretty rapid speed, so it's going to remove a lot of material very, very quickly. Now you can get a variety of sanding belts for this, from 40 from memory up to 150 in the Festool range, but there's many third-party products on the market now, and I'll be looking at some of those shortly, that actually extend that range overall. So in theory, on a low setting of a fine paper, you should be able to bring your end results to quite a fine surface. But we'll see about that as we go through the test. There's not an awful lot to this. There's a couple of motorised wheels here, and the belt stretches between them. There's a single lever here, and unusual for Festool, it's not green, even though it's a key part of the device. That just slides this wheel back, and then your belt can quickly come off. And you can see here there's a sanding plate. Now this is a disposable thing. This is designed to wear out. This one is a cloth and aluminium one from memory, but you can get a harder plate if required. And they last a reasonable amount of time, a couple of years, obviously depending on how you use this. And there's just 4 bolts down here, and this simply clips off and you replace it. To put a belt on, you simply have the lever open. Make sure you're not caught up on the sanding bed. Wrap that round the 2 wheels and lock it down. And that's it. It's that easy, and that's one of the key features of this one over others, how simple it is to change a belt. There's a green knob here, and what that green knob does when it is running, it moves this belt left to right. And what you want to be doing is lining your belt up so it's parallel to the edge of your sanding belt, which is going to be there in our case. Now you are supposed to do that with the motor running, but you get the idea. On the side here we have a dust extraction port, and that's where this bag can lock on. The dust extraction port fits on the side here. Just simply slot it on, twist it round towards the back of the machine, and now you've got your dust extractor in place. While we're here, we'll look at these. These bench stands just simply screw into these knurls at the top there, and that can then clamp down to your bench, and you've now got a static sander, and that's going to be quite useful. Now there is an additional accessory, which is a fence that fits up here. It's called the sanding belt rip fence that you can angle over. Now I've not got that, and to be honest with you, I can't find it on the marketplace. It feels like it'd be a really good feature if you're investing in this. I found one over in Australia, 111 Australian dollars. That's the only place I've actually found them stocked. So I've written off to Festool to see whether that's discontinued. Even in their catalogue it's not discussed anymore, so I think it probably has been discontinued, which is a shame because that would have given me a nice feature here. Now where this promises to add huge value is by this beast here, the sanding plate. Now as you can see, it's a metal sanding plate. It's really robust, it's pretty weighty, and it's got this series of brushes around the outside. And the idea goes is that your sander sits in the middle of that, and those brushes rest on your surface, and that keeps this flat in relationship to the surface you're looking for. It gives you a mean position over that wood. The brushes are great because it allows it to slide around pretty easily. Now you've got these 1, 2, 3, 4 black knurls, and on the sander you've got these sloping little shoulders here, and the same on the other side here. And all you do is you rest this on those black knurls, then you push it forward, lift up this little spring here at the front like so, and push that forward, and then this green knurly knob and black thing sits into there, and the belt is now attached. Now this allows you to adjust the height of the sander, or more importantly the position of the sanding disc in relation to this frame. So by turning this green knob here, this will push the sander back or pull it forward on those elongated angled shoulders that we saw. And as I push that further away, it's effectively lifting the sanding disc up from the base of this. So at the moment, that sander is now completely free to move from my bench. If I wind it the other way, and you can start to see the sander coming down, at some point the sander will stop moving and you'll start to see the plate moving here. Now that sanding disc is now resting on my MFT, so I can use this to adjust the height of that sanding disc in relationship to the surface. And it's that feature that gives it the ability to being a very good device, or the promise of a good device, in flattening out panels. The final feature is this black lever here. If I lift this black lever up, that pushes the sander back, and once again it's free from the surface, but bringing it forward again will take it back to the same set position we put on that green knob. this green knob we've already looked at. That's the one that moves the sanding belt left and right. And here you've got a stay put switch, pushed in, press the green knob and it stays running for you. And on the back here we've got the variable speed control, and we already saw the difference in speed that makes on the device. That's it. That's all there is to the BS75 E sander. Now the question is it any good? Now all these features are great, but the big challenge on this of course is, does it do the job I want it to do? Now remember, I've gone for the belt sander rather than an orbital sander because I want to be able to flatten off glued up panel surfaces, and they don't come much harder than end grain cutting boards. So this is end grain cutting board I've been working on in a previous episode. Say it's got hard maple and it's got cherry inside here. This is all glued up and it's now ready to be flattened off. So the first job is we need to put the sanding disc on this machine. There's a lever here that just simply comes up and it just moves this wheel in, and that slackens things off. Now once I've got the sanding paper back on, we then need to adjust the position of the paper relative to the sanding block. That's what this green knob here is for, and if I turn this you can see this wheel moving, and equally turn the other way, this wheel here comes back. Now what's happening with that wheel, yes it's moving it out and backwards, but it's also cambering that wheel ever so slightly, putting a camber on it, and it's that camber that will then allow the sandpaper to move back and to on the belt. This back wheel doesn't move in terms of the position, that's fixed, and it's direct gear control to the motor inside it, and that's where it gets its sanding power from. So we'll come in first of all with a 40 grit paper. There's an arrow here on the side, if you can see, that says the paper's got to rotate in this direction. And inside, get a better piece, and inside the sanding belts you can see the arrows here. So if we were using this sanding paper, that's a direction, so those arrows there would go in the same direction as the arrow, and that would be the way to go. One of the challenges you get with sanding discs of course is these are just stuck together from long strips, so you don't always obviously get the arrows on here. But I can just see peeping out from underneath the seam an arrow just there that shows me it's got to come in this direction. I'll drop that on, position that somewhere in the middle, and then lock that lever down. Now the next job is I want to turn this on and I want to see how the sandpaper tracks. Now don't be surprised if the sandpaper moves to one side or another, almost as if it's going to jump off the wheels. Then we can adjust it and bring it back to centre using this green knob. Now remember, this is exposed, this is 40 grit, this will take your skin off incredibly quickly, so keep your hands clear. And that movement is typically what you're going to get when you put the belt on. Don't be worried about that, that's the design. Now we just tune this in, and I want this belt running pretty much centrally in this sanding pad here, with the edges being more or less parallel to the edges of that pad. Okay, so you get the idea. That is now set up and tracked perfectly. Next job, I want to put it back onto its sanding frame, like so, and just adjust so the sanding pad is making a light pass across the surface, about there. And now, with that set up, it's simply a matter of working this across the surface to bring it down to smooth. And if all things are equal, it should bring it down pretty quickly and give me a pretty good flat result. I've got it on maximum power, so therefore maximum speed, 40 grit paper, very aggressive, a relatively light touch on here. Safety gear on, let's give it a shot. Wow, boy has that done the job. Look at that. It's brought it down to a beautiful flat finish. I can't feel any undulations in there at all, and I'm pretty confident I've got no dips. My gosh, that is bang on, unbelievably flat. I've never seen anything like that. Yeah, so not only has that brought that down flat, end grain, hard maple, cherry, perfectly flat. It just looks like it's been through a drum sander. So as an idea, absolutely, that has done the job. So yeah, I'm really pleased with that. That's both sides done in about 20 minutes. Beautifully flat, beautifully smooth. I think it's fair to say that this thing works pretty well. So in terms of dust collection, it is reasonably okay, but there's this beautiful pile here of dust on the bench and on my shirt as well, but it didn't leave dust on the surface. I'm not sure if you can see these small speckles of silver here. That's this belt underneath, that's this pad underneath just beginning to wear, and then the silver or the metal that's embedded into that is just coming off onto the surface a little bit, so I probably just need to watch out for that. I wouldn't really want to grind that back into the surface when I go to the next grit of paper. So we'll do a clean down, and then I'm just going to finish off just for fun with the other papers. Shouldn't take as long on the other papers. Now that tool is good. Remember why I was buying this tool? I wanted something that was going to give me a very, very flat surface, none of those undulations that you tend to get when you're using an orbital sander. Something that's going to give me incredibly aggressive stock removal, but something that was refined enough to take me to a gorgeous finish ready surface, and that has done it. I've got a bit more work to do on these. I'm just going to trim these edges off on the table saw. You'll see that in a separate video, and then I'm going to come back and just sand these edges using this device in its tabletop mounted mode, and we'll see whether that's a value add or not. See you in a minute. Okay, so I've now put the sander in its table mounted position, and that just gives me this nice flat surface. So in theory, I can very carefully just clean up the edge of my cutting board. So that's what I'm going to do, and we'll see what that looks like. I've still got the 120 grit paper on. I don't want to be too aggressive on this, and I've turned the volume down to 1, so it's its lowest setting, most delicate setting this tool can possibly have. So let's give it a go and see what we think. And I must say, that has worked incredibly well. I've now got a beautiful board, beautifully finished all over, and this beautiful flat, smooth edge. So that's come out fantastically. So much more versatile than I thought this was going to be. I would love to get my hands on the fence. That would have been a lot easier as a job if I had a square reference fence. Alas, apart from that one in Australia that I found, I can't find that anywhere at all. The other thing that used to be available for this was a plate for the CMS, so you could put it on there and I could use the CMS for a reference surface. With those two features, in fact, thinking about it, just the CMS feature, this would take this to another level. So that's okay, because I can make a fence and I could also make an insert for the CMS, which I'll do in a future project. But overall, I am super impressed with this device, and I'm so glad I didn't go and buy the Rotex, and I know there's going to be lots of comments about your opinions the minute I say that, but I am. This has given me a pristine flat surface, exactly what I wanted it for. It did the entire thing from a very coarse, straight out the clamps, glue up all the way through to 110 in about 35 to 40 minutes of work. Mount it on its side, and it's given me beautiful flat edges, and I can improve the performance of a shop-made fence in the CMS insert. What's not to like? Great device, the Festool BS75 E belt sander. Yes, it's an investment, but if you're in a similar situation to me, small workshop, and you can't afford that big belt sander, and you use a lot of panels in your work, and you want a supremely flat finish ready to do your final oil on, that is highly recommended. Hope you found this useful. I'll see you soon.